Most of the principles are kind of scalable downwards to a certain extent. So this is a question like we in the effectiveness research world get asked a lot, right? Does this, all of the data tends to be for big brands, and mature brands, and there's not much around for kind of smaller businesses, earlier stage businesses, and so do the rules apply? And certainly from what in my experience working with businesses right from super early stage startups, right through to big mature corporates, um, a lot of the foundations are definitely the same. So it's definitely true that in any market there are two types of demand, and one is what I call existing demand, which is people who are ready to buy right now, and the other is future demand, which are people who will come into the category at some point, but they're not ready to just yet. And that's true of that's true of Coca-Cola, and it's true of the tiniest startup. Where it differs slightly for a startup or a very small business is when you're in your very early stages, there's sort of a pool of what I call existing demand, which are people out there who have the problem that you're solving and no one's come along and solved it before. So there's value in actually working pretty hard to get those customers in the early days. So that's not about sort of talking to the ones that will come into the category later. It's not about future demand. It is about just kind of harvesting the demand that's out there at the moment. And so that's really, that's a little bit different. Your mix might be a little bit tilted towards short-term kind of more performance marketing in those very early stages, but then you pretty soon get out of those, like in your first 2 to 3 years, and that's when it's kind of becomes very important to have a relationship with all of the people who are going to come into the category at some point in the next few months or a couple of years, because you want them when they do to kind of gravitate towards your brand. So a principle like that, it's scalable down to very small, very early stage businesses, but the kind of the ratio, the mix might sort of change a little along the way. But yeah, generally the kind of the key principles, like you need to be spending enough to grow. I mean, that's as true of small brands as of big brands. If you want to grow in your category, you need to be spending an adequate amount of money, above your kind of the share of market in terms of your share of voice. That's the same for small brands as it is for big brands. The sort of targeting principles, like it's more important to try and drive penetration with marketing than it is to try to drive loyalty. Advertising is very good at creating penetration increases. It's not very good at increasing, improving loyalty metrics. And so that's the same in kind of smaller businesses. Some businesses, it's a little bit different. Like we've been working a bit in the meal kit delivery industry lately, and that's a kind of really interesting business that doesn't quite follow those same rules. Their top 20% of their customers do make up 80 or 90% of their sales, which isn't typically true of larger businesses, and so the rules are slightly different there. So yeah, what am I trying to say? A lot of the effectiveness principles are just the same for smaller businesses. It's just sort of scaling those down and doing scaling those down to the amount of money or the amount of resource that you've got.